For years, public health messaging demonized certain foods based on early research, oversimplified dietary guidelines, or media-driven fear. Many of these foods were deemed harmful to heart health, weight management, or overall wellness. However, modern nutritional science, bolstered by improved research methods and a more nuanced understanding of human metabolism, has reversed the reputation of several of these once misunderstood ingredients. Among them, few have experienced as dramatic a redemption arc as the humble egg, a food once vilified for its cholesterol content, but now widely recognized as a nutritional powerhouse. And eggs are only the beginning. Eggs were long avoided or consumed sparingly by those concerned about heart disease, owing to the fact that egg yolks are naturally high in dietary cholesterol. The assumption, prevalent for decades, was that eating cholesterol-rich foods would directly raise cholesterol levels in the blood, thereby increasing cardiovascular risk. As a result, public health guidelines for much of the late 20th century advised limiting egg consumption, especially among those at risk for heart disease. However, large-scale studies and more rigorous randomized controlled trials over the past 2 decades have dismantled this simplistic view. It turns out that for the vast majority of people, dietary cholesterol has only a modest effect on blood cholesterol levels. In fact, eggs not only do not raise LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, in most people, but they tend to raise HDL, the good cholesterol that actually protects against heart disease. Moreover, eggs are a rich source of essential nutrients like choline, vitamin D, lutein, and zeaxanthin, all vital for brain health, eye function, and overall cellular integrity. The modern consensus? Eggs are not only safe for most people, but they're also one of nature's most nutrient-dense foods. Another food once unfairly maligned is full-fat dairy. Throughout the low-fat diet craze of the 1980s and 1990s, saturated fat became public enemy number one, and whole milk, yogurt, and cheese were replaced with low-fat or fat-free versions in homes, hospitals, and school cafeterias across the developed world. The logic seemed sound at the time. Reduce fat to reduce body fat. But science has since shown that the relationship between dietary saturated fat and heart disease is more complex than previously thought, and that full-fat dairy may actually confer health benefits. Several recent cohort studies have found that people who consume moderate amounts of full-fat dairy have a lower risk of metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, and even stroke compared to those who consume low-fat alternatives. Part of the reason may lie in the bioactive compounds present in dairy fat, which may help regulate inflammation and support metabolic function. In addition, full-fat dairy is more satiating, which may prevent overeating later in the day. The emerging view is that whole-fat dairy, especially when derived from grass-fed sources, is not something to fear, but to enjoy in moderation as part of a balanced diet. Likewise, nuts and seeds were once considered too fatty or calorie-dense to be part of a healthy diet. Traditional diet advice advised against consuming almonds, walnuts, or peanut butter due to their high fat content. But this advice ignored the type of fat they contain, mainly unsaturated fats, which support heart and brain health, as well as the other nutrients packed into these small but mighty foods. Today, nuts and seeds are recognized as some of the healthiest foods one can eat. Studies consistently show that regular consumption of nuts is linked to lower risks of cardiovascular disease, better weight control, and even longer lifespan. They're also rich in fiber, plant protein, magnesium, and antioxidants. As a result, nuts are now included in many heart-healthy dietary patterns, including the Mediterranean and DASH diets. Even coffee, once suspected of causing high blood pressure, heart disease, or even cancer, has undergone a dramatic transformation in its public perception. While it's true that caffeine can cause temporary increases in blood pressure in sensitive individuals, large-scale studies have revealed that regular coffee consumption is not only safe for most people, but may offer protective benefits. Coffee drinkers appear to have a reduced risk of several chronic diseases, including Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, type 2 diabetes, and even some cancers. Antioxidants like chlorogenic acid, present in coffee beans, may help combat inflammation and support healthy blood vessels. Furthermore, moderate coffee consumption is associated with improved mood, mental alertness, and metabolic function. Today, moderate intake, typically defined as up to 3 to 5 cups per day, is not only considered safe, but even potentially beneficial for longevity. Another misunderstood food group is potatoes. These starchy tubers were vilified during the carb-phobic eras of the Atkins and keto diet movements, painted as blood sugar bombs with little nutritional value. However, This critique ignores the fact that potatoes are incredibly rich in potassium, vitamin C, fiber, especially with the skin on, and resistant starch, a type of carbohydrate that feeds beneficial gut bacteria and may improve insulin sensitivity. When not deep fried or drowned in butter, potatoes are a wholesome, versatile, and satisfying part of a healthy diet. Boiled, baked, or roasted, they offer a nourishing alternative to ultra-processed refined grains. Even chocolate, especially dark chocolate, has seen a dramatic image shift. Once dismissed as little more than a sugary indulgence, cocoa-rich dark chocolate is now appreciated for its flavonoid content, natural compounds that may help reduce blood pressure, improve blood flow, and protect the heart. Research suggests that moderate consumption of dark chocolate, at least 70% cocoa content, may improve cardiovascular health, lower inflammation, and enhance mood. Of course, the key is moderation and quality. Candy bars full of sugar and milk fat won't confer the same benefits as a few squares of high-quality dark chocolate. In many ways, the redemption of these foods reflects a broader shift in nutrition science, away from fear-based avoidance of individual nutrients and toward a more holistic understanding of food quality, context, and dietary patterns. It's no longer just about fat versus carbs or calories in versus calories out. The matrix of nutrients, the way food is processed, the overall balance of the diet, and even how food makes us feel, these all matter. Foods once labeled as bad have turned out, in many cases, to be vital components of a healthful lifestyle. So, whether it's eggs at breakfast, a handful of almonds as a snack, or a cup of black coffee with a square of dark chocolate, many of the items that previous generations were warned to avoid now deserve a place at the table. When chosen thoughtfully and consumed in the context of a varied, minimally processed diet, these foods not only nourish our bodies, they also restore our faith in the idea that healthy eating can be both pleasurable and deeply satisfying.